Hey, this is Tom Glavine, and you're listening to Out of Left Field on The Grueling Truth.
Hey guys, welcome back to Out of Left Field. Graham and Chris here with you after what turned out to be one of the craziest divisional series playoffs that we have seen in recent memory. I think aside from last year where the Indians began to kind of buzzsaw through everybody, it really happened just like we picked. We figured the Indians were going to lose. We figured that the Diamondbacks would totally get swept by the Dodgers. Okay, I'm just totally BSing here because our picks were horrible, Chris Furry. So let's put them all in play, which is something that the Diamondbacks didn't get a chance to do much of during their series with the Dodgers. And let's start out with the series that everyone is talking about. It's still fresh on everyone's mind, and God knows it lasted forever and was definitely not without controversy, and that is last night's ending of the Nationals and Cubs in Game 5, where the Cubs played heartbreaker again to the nation's capital. You start to think that the nation's capital just doesn't have teams capable of really doing anything in the playoffs, right? The Capitals can't go ahead and make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. The Nationals can't get out of the first round since they've been in existence. And, the Redskins are the Redskins who,
and then, of
course, the Wizards.
The Redskins won opportunity when they had a young, fresh quarterback who was so hyped up and everybody thought RG3 was the next GOAT. Not only did they manage to lose that playoff game, but they also managed to basically end Robert Griffin's career by allowing him to go out there on an injured knee. So, again, is it the fact that the nation's capital doesn't have teams capable, or is the nation's capital's coaching staffs not capable of managing a team to a championship? That's the question on everybody in Washington, D.C.'s mind right now, especially when you look at how Dusty Baker handled his starting rotation and the complications that arose from that. That's something we're definitely going to get into later today. But I don't.
And let's start there, because what the hell was this? All right, games 1 through 3, the Cubs blanked the Nats in Game 1. Harper has the big home run. Obviously, the Cubs have a huge lead. Then the Harper and Zimmerman home run back-to-back basically, gives the or not back-to-back, but, within the same inning, basically gives the Nationals that 6-3 advantage, and they top the Cubs. Cubs come back Game 1 at Wrigley. They win 2-1, and then all hell basically just opens up, and the wrath rains down of John Q. Public on the Nationals in Game 4 when we hear that. Well, let's go back here for a second. Game 4 was scheduled for October 10th. Okay, obviously we get the rain out. Everything is kind of screwy. We've heard different reasons as to why things happened as they did. MLB said they wanted to move the game to 1 o'clock. Turner said no. They compromised at, I think, 5:30. Rain was going to be right around the corner. They don't even start the game because of the threat of rain. Rain hadn't even began when the game gets started. So everything gets moved to October 11th. Just so you know, guys, want to let you know, Chris is out and about doing some stuff right now. So the podcast we do record via phone, so there is, you may hear a little bit of background noise. That will end very shortly, but just want to let you guys know what you hear in there. So then Game 4 runs around. Stephen Strasburg says he can't go, he's ill. Dusty Baker gives the weirdest bleeping answer I've ever heard to reporters as to why he can't go, that, Strasburg is kind of under the weather the same way the rest of the team is. The mold going around. I think it's mold, but he's not going to go, and Tanner Roark's going to go. So first it's like, wait, what? So Stephen Strasburg's not going to pitch because what? Then, of course, the media explodes hearing this. Says that Strasburg
but here's the thing, though.
Is scared to take the ball.
The obvious answer is to put Strasburg in, but let's not forget that Game 4 was Roark's start, not Strasburg's. The only reason Strasburg was even considered at this point is because the delay allowed him to come back on full rest. In my opinion, that is the hugest mistake that Dusty Baker could have possibly made, was bowing to pressure and starting Strasburg in Game 4. Because if Roark gets in trouble, you still have Strasburg. And if Strasburg starts Game 5, this is a completely different LCS.
But see, that's where we disagree. To me, I want Strasburg in Game 4 because without Game 4 in the win column, you can't get to Game 5. I'm okay with wanting Strasburg to start, but I think it was horrible the way that it was handled. If Strasburg was really sick, then Dusty Baker should have come out and said, look, man, he doesn't feel well at all. He's getting IVs. He's having a hard time breathing. He's wheezing a lot. We're worried about putting him out there for his health in the long term. This being a solution to get the team into Game 5. I'm fine with that. But you go ahead and pitch him. It looks like, and there's really no way to see it after guys like Mark Teixeira and David Ross of ESPN just blast him for not wanting the ball. Strasburg takes the ball, and to say that he impressed is an understatement. Blanks the Cubs. The Nationals win 5-0. Strasburg pitched absolutely fantastic. One of the best outings that we have seen pitching-wise in the divisional series on either side. He went 7 innings, allowed 3 hits, very close to what we saw from him in Game 1. Of course, you can go with very similar numbers to Dallas Keuchel and Justin Verlander in Games 1 and 2 of their ALDS. But then we come back to Game 5. It's going to be the next day because of the rain delay. And you and I are thinking, well, of course, Tanner Roark is going to pitch this game because he didn't pitch yesterday. He's ready to go. And then Gio Gonzalez gets the start.
On short rest.
Yes, on short rest. So what the hell is going on here? Tanner Roark, a guy who should be trusted by this ball club, has pitched, pitched well. Not as good as he has in past. Had an upper 4 ERA this year, but a guy that you should not have any concern with throwing, and then you completely skip over him. He never sees the mound, and you go Gio and then Max Scherzer to come in relief, and Scherzer took the loss. So let's start with the beginning of this game in Game 5 where everything really kind of came to a head. Gio comes in. The early run off of him, of course, we get Murphy with the answering 1-1 solo shot, and then from there, man, it just opened up.
Yeah, and exactly. And so here's the problem. This is exactly what I'm talking about when I say that people are going to be talking about whether or not Dusty Baker should still be managing a Major League Baseball team after this game, because when you pull from your starting rotation and you completely skip Tanner Roark and put in Gio Gonzalez, who A, is on short rest, and B, already has a reputation and a record for getting in trouble early, now I have a problem with your decision-making.
Because he has the worst first-inning ERA, I believe, in the major leagues this year of over 5.5, and in those 3 innings pitched that you're talking about, he had a 6.75 ERA, walked 4, struck out 5, and allowed all 3 runs earned on his record.
Right, and the problem is that you're putting in a pitcher who's known for getting into trouble early, and you're putting him in against a team who's known for jumping on pitchers early. So when you're talking about a team like the Cubs who has so many young, fast bats, why would you go to a guy who's probably going to give up 2 or 3 runs in the first couple of innings?
And we saw that in his wild. He had 2 wild pitches last night, and we saw the one, I think it was in the first or second inning, where he missed he entire outside batter's box. He pretty much threw that pitch completely outside of the left-handed batter's box. It just, you can say it's out of his hand, whatever, but to me, something like that. And again, I'm never been a pitcher or anything like that, but that to me shows an early loss of control and a loss of command. That's where you and I started when we were talking, going, okay, this is why Roark should have started, because you have a guy who should be able to go deeper into your game. You can bring in Scherzer if you need to, which apparently wasn't the best option here, as he took the loss in Game 5. But
exactly,
it was just screwy. Michael Taylor, obviously, with the grand slam in Game 4 and another home run in Game 5. He's the first player in history to have 2 back-to-back 4 RBI games in the postseason. I mean, a great coming-out party for him. And, of course, the Nats hung up that 4th spot on Hendricks in the second. You and I thinking, okay, time to pull him. And to his credit, Hendricks actually pitched fairly well aside from that one inning. He went 4 innings, allowed 9 hits, all 4 earned runs, but struck out 7 and walked the 1. Command was off. We saw him hang some pitches. But getting at least into that 4-inning part made life a little bit easier, because could you imagine how much longer the game would have been if we had been into the bullpen in the second inning for both of these guys? I mean, my God, we went over 4.5 hours, and it felt like it lasted all night. But we flip around, and let's get into really where kind of the craziness began. Scherzer comes in relief. We have Baez at the plate, and then, Baez at the plate. We've got Russell on second. I don't recall who was on first, because it's kind of inconsequential at this point. But 2 outs, 2 strikes on Baez, and we get the slider that Scherzer buries in the dirt. Probably broke it too much, and Baez swings over the top of it, but his barrel just barely clips the mask of Nationals catcher Matt Wieters. Wieters looks at home plate umpire Jerry Lane, who Lane got smoked last night, and a tip of the cap to him for a solid game, being able to stay in after taking 2 horrific shots to the mask. I don't know if you saw the video, man. I will send it to you. That second shot that he just missed. Ferris missed, but my God.
He took one to the body too, didn't he? Didn't one get through and get him in the leg or something too?
I don't think so. I think it was just the 2 off the mask that I recall. But Baez makes contact with the mask of Wieters. The ball has gotten through his legs. He did a poor job blocking the ball. Let's be honest here. He did. Should have been able. He was down far enough. Had the glove in a bad spot. The glove was on the side of his thigh instead of blocking that 5-hole. He misses the baseball. It gets past him. Contact is made. Baez takes off. Wieters retrieves the ball quickly, makes a horrific throw to first, and Russell was not stopping. He had already rounded third and was trying to get home because of where Wieters was, and Scherzer never covered home. So Russell's thinking, okay, even if Baez can just beat the throw, and the throw is caught by Zimmerman, I should have a good chance of being able to head first slide in here and beat a play into the plate. Now, obviously, the error happens, but take us through the play and what your thoughts are on the lack of replayability of what happened, because I've already explained to you what the ruling should have been. Take us through what your thought process was on that play and beyond.
Well, first of all, let's look at this completely from a baseball IQ standpoint. This is where Matt Wieters really shows that he was either not paying attention or his baseball IQ is just a little bit low. When you're in a situation like what Matt Wieters was in yesterday, where you miss a block on a blockable pitch, fine. You don't exacerbate that situation after 1 run is already scored. You don't exacerbate that situation by then rushing a throw down the line to try to get that base runner. I get it. You want to get that strikeout for an out and not let that player get on base. The problem is you have the very fast, very efficient runner in Addison Russell rounding third at that point, and Wieters needs to have the baseball IQ to know that even if he makes a strike throw, and even if he makes a strike throw, if anything possibly goes wrong, heel comes off the bag, anything, and that out isn't made at first, Addison Russell scores. Even if the throw isn't offline, Addison Russell scores if it's not an out at first base. If the fast-running Baez makes it down the line before you can get that throw off, Addison Russell scores. how good the throw back to home is, Russell's too fast. You have to have the baseball IQ to know, okay, I can't afford to trade runs for outs right now. I have to either hold on to the ball if I don't know that I'm going to get the out, or I have to be 100% sure that I'm going to get the out at first before I release the baseball.
And let's not take blame away here from Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer is a good 50 feet, if not more, away from the plate. He's probably 10 steps off the mound, walking towards the dugout. He made no point to even try and get home. If you're right on this. This is a failure on multiple parties here. Even had Wieters held the ball and not thrown, Russell was not stopping.
Right.
We see this.
He's
rounding. He's getting the stop sign. It doesn't look like he was stopping at all. It's hard to tell because as soon as he kind of would reach the point where he would hold, the camera pans towards first. But no one's covering home. And if it's a foot race, 85 feet with Addison Russell or 50 feet by Matt Wieters in catcher's gear, I'm giving Russell that one 9 times out of 10, probably more. If you give me 100 chances there, but
and you're probably
going
to end up with a pair of head first slides toward the plate, one from the catcher, one from the runner. Someone's going to get hurt, and even then, Addison Russell has a high likelihood of being safe.
Right, and that's one of those where I'm not sure on this one. Let me look at the stats real quick here on Max Scherzer. He allowed 4 runs. Only 2 of them were earned, and I'm making the assumption here that this was not an earned run. It probably should have been, because even if you're not going to give the pass ball, it doesn't go as an error. There really was no chance to get Baez, and again, I understand home cooking a little bit on the scorekeeping. But to me, that was an earned run because it was a mental error by Scherzer that allowed that run to score at the end of the day. Had Wieters held the ball, there was still no chance to get him.
Right. Had Wieters held the ball, then it's an earned run on Scherzer because the error should go to him for not covering the plate. However, the throw negates that. The bad throw to first base allowed that run to score, hands down, no question.
So what you're saying is that Max Scherzer should get negative 10 training points for failing to cover a base.
Yes.
But let's look then back at what happened on the play. I watch it. Yes, you do see the mask move slightly, but on the backswing, Baez's barrel makes contact with the frame of that silver Force 3 mask that Matt Wieters is wearing after the ball, and this is the big thing here, after the ball has already gone through his legs. So they asked Jerry Lane, obviously the word judgment is used ad nauseum in his explanation, but basically his feeling in this, and again, I didn't see it right off the bat. Wieters comes to him afterwards, doesn't wait, doesn't say anything. It didn't hinder or affect the play at all, in my judgment, if you will. But
and I think that's the key, is that it didn't hinder the play.
Right. So, ball gets to the wall. We know what happens here, and Wieters goes to Lane and says, "Hey, that ball hit me in the mask." You see him talking about it. You see the replays, and the question is, well, my gosh, how did they miss that? Well, how much do we talk about? Oh, well, the umpire stares at the base and listens for the ball.
Right.
You use every perception that you've got, a lot of peripheral vision. You're trying to see everything that you can. That crowd was screaming loud. Obviously, you got 2 strikes. Now they're going to be loud because who doesn't get loud when it's 2 strikes? Trying to pump your pitcher up. There is no way that Jerry Lane is going to hear that bat tick off the mask. In my opinion, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd be able to. We know that there was a catcher's interference in one of the at-bats on Wieters that they didn't see or hear the bat hit the glove, and plus he's tracking a baseball that's spiked into the dirt that he has to see. Can Wieters hold on to it and get a caught third strike, or is it going to be dropped and he has to allow, he has to signal that, hey, it's third strike, but it's on the ground, and Baez has a chance to run to first base and beat the throw out. So his
Right.
eyes are tracking a baseball moving 90 miles per hour. The question then becomes in this. The rule would state, and again, the judgment is here, and he's explained why. Not that he didn't see it, but that basically, in his judgment, it didn't interfere with the play, and because the ball had already gotten past Matt Wieters prior to the contact being made, the rule did not apply to this particular play. Okay, granted,
Right.
I understand that. But assuming he didn't see it, the question then becomes, do you open up replay to something like this on backswing interference when we've already seen that replay was used in the Jose Lobaton case on the pickoff from Contreras to Rizzo, because that is not the spirit of why replay was created, Chris. The idea
Right.
of replay
No, and I agree.
is egregious calls like Galarraga's perfect game out of the game and try and solve those, not to have, the string of
Bang,
Rizzo's
bang.
glove clipped the
Judgment
thigh of
plays.
Lobaton with his cleat a half inch away from the bag. And that's basically what we got to end
And-
that inning. It's a huge replay.
Right.
But
and here's the problem. And here's the problem. Even with replay having shown, apparently, according to the umpires in the booth, apparently conclusively that Lobaton was out, I disagree because I don't think there's enough angle. Now, you can look at that in slow motion and stop motion all you want, but you're still looking at it from 30 or 40 feet away, and either contact is either blocked by the glove hand or by the body of Lobaton in either angle, and in game time or in real time, the hand is sweeping away from the body on the tag. He doesn't apply and hold the tag; he sweeps the tag. So, in my opinion, neither of those angles is conclusive enough in real time to override the eyes-on judgment of the umpire standing there making the call as the play happens.
Yes. To me, on the replay, I thought I saw contact still in place prior to Lobaton getting his foot back. He slid on the bag, the foot came off. It looked to me like there was still an angle. I'm obviously not watching the replay in the way that those guys are, and assuming they have more angles than what Fox has. That's also the thing we have to keep in mind is that what we saw there, or on Turner rather, there's a good possibility that what we see in New York may be more than what you're getting in on TBS through just regular
Right.
TV. So that's something else we want to keep in mind.
But to go back to what you were saying about it not being the spirit of replay, not being the spirit of what replay was exactly designed to do, this is the same thing as what the NFL ran into. And if baseball allows this to continue this way, it's going to turn into exactly the problem the NFL has. The NFL's replay initially was not intended to be able to tell if a single spike had touched the white line on a catch in the end zone and therefore the foot was out of bounds. That's not the spirit of NFL replay, but that is, on a weekly basis, game to game, what it is used for.
Right, and now we saw last week with the Zeke Elliott play that when he's reaching out over the pile, there's no way that a wing official can see where that he reached out and brought the ball back in a pile of 20 250 plus pound guys. But the eye in the sky was right over top of it. You see him reach out, you see him come back, progress is stopped. Look at that, first down. And that's the idea of what replay is used for. It's the things like the Galarraga play, the plays where, oh my gosh, how did he miss that call? That kind of thing. Where there's an out by a step and a half on a scoop that maybe you just, maybe the scoop and the way the guy moves blocks you. That's the thing. It's something like this. It changes the entire complexion of the game. And while you can say, man, look at that. Will Little's back there. He should have. He should have had. He should have on that call. Will Little made the right call. Period. End of story. Will Little was correct. I'm going to go ahead and give it that way to you. You can say, oh, well, look at the percentage of umpire calls being overturned. That's great. But then let's go ahead and look at how many of these times that it's being overturned by a split second. So,
right,
absolutely an insane series. The Cubs move on. The Nationals, we'll see what happens there. I think Roark is going to be gone. He's a free agent this year. If I'm him, I feel that my ball club gives me no respect. They have no faith in me. I would be surprised if he resigns or if he's already packing up his bag and selling that house in D.C. It's going to be an interesting one. I don't know, man. It's going to be one hell of a National League championship series, and we're going to be giving you all of our breakdowns and our LCS predictions here coming up. And just like every week, guys, we are so proud to be brought to you by the Grueling Truth Network. Check them out at thegruelingtruth.net, where legends speak. Great stuff on there. The weekly Pick'em show for both the NFL and college, your NFL power rankings, the Ringside Boxing show, just to name a few. Also, make sure to check us out at OO Left Field on Twitter and at Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook, as well as the Out of Left Field baseball community page. So as we take a look now at the series that one of the few that you and I have picked that's kind of blown up in our face. I think we both agreed. I know I said this, and I'm not sure you didn't give me much grief for it. I really thought that the Dodgers-Diamondback series was going to be the best series we were going to see in this divisional series and be a 3-2 winning, a 5-game type thing. And instead, Diamondbacks come out and just, I don't want to say they laid an egg. And granted, you can look at the numbers, the stats, the slash lines, all that stuff. And in a 3-game series, it's not nearly going to be as telling as what the season was for them. But the Diamondbacks had a team average of 189, almost over 100 points lower than that of the Dodgers. They had a .252 team on base percentage. They struck out 28 times, walked 7. 18 total hits and 3 errors. The errors will come back into play more so when we talk about the Indians and the Yankees here in the next segment. But, man, I expected a hell of a lot more from the Diamondbacks, and it just seemed like no matter what they threw, at the Dodgers, there was always just somebody better to kind of counteract and, take it back to Phoenix and leave that city really, really quiet.
Well, and the fact of the matter is that they did lay an egg. There's a big old goose egg up there in the win column for that divisional series. And the Arizona Diamondbacks, I think you and I both agreed, were probably going to be the team that we expected to take their series to 5 over any of these other teams. And we were just flat out wrong. I mean, the way these two teams traded blows throughout the regular season, the Diamondbacks would win a couple of games. The Dodgers would win a couple of games. The Diamondbacks went on that great run at the end of the season where they swept the Dodgers twice in consecutive series in the same week. And you just don't see that sort of back and forth between two teams ending in a 3-0 sweep by the Dodgers, despite the fact that the Dodgers were the best team in the league this year.
Right. And I guess what really got me is, and granted, I'm not trying to make excuses for our picks, but I mean, hell, I have to at some point kind of defend us, right? Because who else is going to defend us? But
nobody.
We made our wild card and division picks together. We certainly did not have an expectation in the wild card that it was going to be as, pun intended, wild as it turned out to be. With that 11 to 8 final, just back and forth. And the odd thing is, you look at just that one game, the Diamondbacks hit .415 in that wild card game, but the way that Greinke failed to produce in the wild card game in my opinion, directly affects what happened in this divisional series, because then you forced Torey Lovullo to put in a massive amount of stress on your bullpen, bringing in guys like Robbie Ray. We saw the Beard, and I'm sorry that I draw Archie Bradley. We see all these guys back and forth, and then unfortunately that means that you have to put Taijuan Walker in there on October 6th for Game 1, and then Robbie Ray comes in presumably on what you would call, let's be honest, a little bit of short rest, because he went, I think, 2 or 3 innings. So, he's coming in there, 3 days after he pitched, so 2 days of actually resting his arm and doing no work, and it just didn't work out. It worked out the way that you would have expected it to. 9-5 Game 1, 8-5 Game 2, and the Dodgers kind of finessed their way to a 3-1 final in Game 3 down there in Phoenix. Yu Darvish did what we expected him to do. Clayton Kershaw, for the most part, as we discussed in the show last week, pitched very well up until the 7th inning and then made some pretty big mistakes. The good thing is, it's easy at first glance to glean over it because, okay, Kershaw's 1-0, he has the win, who cares? We saw the mistakes from him, and that'll be something I think that obviously in a 7-game set, Dave Roberts will handle differently when it's needed. But, you see a 6.48 team ERA for the Diamondbacks in this DS. Andrew Chafin only made it through 1/3 of an inning the entire time. So it's a 27 ERA. It's not great. You don't have great sample sizes, but, Taijuan Walker only makes it out of 1 inning, gives up 4 earned runs. You go down the line here, and you see Zach Godley, Zach Greinke, Robbie Ray, Jimmy Sherfy, and Taijuan Walker. All 5 of those pitchers gave up either 3 or 4 runs during their time on the hill. It's just not what you expected from this team who, they were kind of hit or miss, but for a while they were going step for step with the Indians down that win streak until they got over a baker's dozen and near 14 or 15, man.
Yeah, and there's just no excuses can really be made. They just didn't perform. They didn't pitch the way we expected them to see. You expected to see them pitch, especially after the way we've seen them pitch. Really during that long win streak that they went on. Those guys were all lights out pitchers during that win streak, and you expected to see that go into the postseason, especially since it was so close to the end of the regular season that win streak occurred. It's not like that win streak was something that happened in June or July. That happened in September. And you expected to see them, go into there and go into the postseason and pitch lights out like that. And the fact is, you got guys like Robbie Ray ending his postseason with an 8.31 ERA, and realistically, that's kind of the good news for their starters. Taijuan Walker with a 36 ERA, 1 inning pitched, 4 hits, 4 runs, 4 earned. It's mind-blowing to think that these guys who pitched themselves into a long win streak only weeks before came in and just really gave it up like that. On the other side, though, on the flip side, you got to really hand it to the Los Angeles Dodgers and their ability to get their guys to pitch, because they were sort of the opposite situation. While the Diamondbacks were going on this long win streak, the Dodgers were going on a long losing streak, and their guys were getting beat up. And for them to have the fortitude.
Yeah, didn't 6 or 7 of those losses in a row come at the hands of the Diamondbacks when they split 2 series between LA and Phoenix?
Yeah, and got swept in both series. So you're talking about 6 consecutive losses against Diamondbacks pitching, and the Diamondbacks can't put a single win together against them in the postseason. But guys who were getting beat up late in the year, like Kenta Maeda, like Yu Darvish, they came out and pitched just phenomenal baseball, which is what you expect Yu Darvish to do, but you hope that he's not going to have the same sort of issues that he was having towards the end of the season. And, I mean, apparently wishes won out over expectations in this series. That's all you can really say about it, because the Dodgers pulled off this sweep that was just really phenomenal to watch.
Yeah, and I'm still worried about Rich Hill. Obviously, Maeda took the winning game, too, after Hill came out early. They're still concerned with him. He has flashes of absolute brilliance. And the hope for L.A. is that those flashes of brilliance make themselves seen during the National League Championship Series, and hopefully for them also a trip to the World Series. The important thing here, though, when it's all said and done, is when you look at, okay, this team had to obviously play 27 innings of baseball. All right, I mean that's kind of the way that the game. I mean, I'm not a math major, but that's the way the game works, if I remember correctly. Well, the important thing here, what's that?
Those are the requirements.
Yeah, the important thing here is that out of those 27 innings, 15 and a third were eaten up by the starters, and that's something that we have not seen throughout much of this postseason on both sides of the coin, where starters are getting pulled very, very early, and it's a starter in the bullpen, a guy who's rehabbing in the bullpen, long innings, eat up time that way kind of game. This is this was a series where at least for the Dodgers, their starters were able to eat up over half of the needed innings pitched, which is also going to be helpful for them. Next nearest was going to be Brandon Morrow and Kenley Jansen, who both went 3 2/3. But you see the way Darvish pitched. He allowed 1 earned run on only 2 hits in 5 innings. Kershaw allowed 4 earned runs. Granted, the majority of those came, or 2 of those came in the 7th, where he was pitching pretty well, began to hang some things up there. But it's and that goes to show that kind of pitch and that longevity is also why we saw such poor hitting from the Diamondbacks. I know we were talking about this off air. Paul Goldschmidt hitting .091 for the series. David Peralta hits .077. A.J. Pollock hits 111. Guys that you expected to do something, just they didn't. Brandon Drury hit the Mendoza line 200. J.D. Martinez and Ketel Marte, 2 guys who obviously we were big on. Marte being a huge acquisition, as we mentioned, from the Mariners, and Martinez easily, I think the biggest trade deadline acquisition. Those guys in Martinez and Marte hit 364 and 333 respectively. No walks on either side, but still, I mean, it's what you want to see, from those guys. So there just wasn't a lot of offensive production. It was an odd series, not what we expected at all. But again, I think that's where some might say, oh, well, the wild card caused this issue. Yeah, it did. But you know what? Win your division, then you ain't got to worry about playing in the wild card game. It's why the wild card is so good.
Well, and there's one thing that I think bears mentioning at this point, and that is the fact that Paul Goldschmidt going .091 was probably the real killer of this team, because he's your cleanup guy, your number 3 guy. He's your power guy, and he's also the guy who we give both of us almost gave a nod as an MVP candidate, as the MVP winner for 2017, and for that caliber of player to have that poor of a series, it's soul sucking for the team, for the fans, for everyone.
Yeah, it was, and it just they're in a great place to. Same way that another team that we're going to talk about here in just a minute are going to be. They've got a manager, a new manager there who's going to be there for a while. A great group. Their goal needs to be to throw a lot of money at J.D. Martinez, because teams like Boston are going to come out there and look for a big bat. It's part of the reason why Boston struggled. We're going to talk about them coming up here in just a minute, but definitely, that to me is he is the crux of that offense right now. You keep him and you keep, the Goldschmidt, the Marte, that kind of thing intact, and you're going to start to have a 2 through 4 kind of lineup the same way that the Nationals do in a Marte, Goldschmidt, JD Martinez. It's going to put you in a really nice position. So that is definitely where I think they will focus. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Indians, a collapse for the ages. And did Brett Gardner have the best at bat that we've seen this season? Stay tuned to Out of Left Field. Be right back.
Replenishing Technologies helps athletes of all levels train, recover, and perform at their absolute best. We do this by offering the PEMF 120, the world's leading pulsed electromagnetic field therapy device. Workouts, injury, and stress cause cells to lose their natural power. PEMF works like a battery charger, helping cells regain the power needed to dump toxins, take in oxygen and nutrients, and repair. 95% of athletes report less pain, increased range of motion, more energy, and they simply feel better after using PEMF 120. If you'd like to count yourself among that group, contact us at www.replenishingtechnologiesinc.com.
And we're back here with you on Out of Left Field. Just get done talking about the National League Division Series. That World Series set is already matched up, and of course we will give our league championship predictions at the end of the show. As we flip over, man, and you know that everyone, and let's just, hands are up, all right? I'm guilty of it. We both thought, and this is the one series I said I thought could be a sweep. I thought the Indians were gonna waltz in there, had the possibility to sweep the Yankees. Maybe it goes 3-1, and I was going to come up with, it went off just like I thought it would without a hitch, except that the Indians are going home, and they lost in 5 games, and we saw some of the worst pitching possible from Corey Kluber that led to a drastic and unimagined downfall. And once again, pitching played a key role in another series, and this time it's the fact that Corey Kluber in 2 games had a 12.79 ERA and only pitched 6 1/3 innings throughout the entire series. It's mind-boggling, man. I honestly don't know what to say. We were talking last night. I was in shock. I was speechless. I think that, unfortunately, I think that the Astros have got to be thrilled by the outcome because they have a monstrous offense that we will talk about here in just a minute, and they're facing a team that is going to be heavily overmatched. But, man, right now they're playing for Joe Girardi after a lot of the talk in the media this week about him maybe not wanting to come back or the front office not wanting him back. And these Yankees pitched and played. They didn't hit that well. They hit just over the Mendoza line at 201. But Didi Gregorius and, as we mentioned, not Daniel Murphy, Michael Taylor of the Nationals are making huge cases to the commissioner's office to put a divisional series MVP in these postseasons because, what a fantastic, 235, but those 2 big home runs propelled them forward. It was just an all-around kind of crazy series with offense and even worse pitching.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody could have predicted, no one is going to say before this series starts is going to say, Corey Kluber is going to get chased in the third in the first game, and then, in the third in the first game and in the fourth in the second game. And not only that, he's going to give up 10 runs, or 9 runs on 10 hits, and average a whip, a walk and hits per inning pitched of over 2, which is, to say that it's far from his regular season performance is a bit of a misnomer, a bit of an understatement, because it's more than double his regular season performance at WHIP. His regular season WHIP at .869 So, and as far as the hitting goes for the Yankees, yeah, it was not great. It was worse for the Indians, but it was not great for the Yankees. The key thing about the Yankees hitting was that it was timely. They got hits when they needed them. They moved runners around the bases, and of course, Didi Gregorius hitting the long ball. I mean, you would think that that Didi's last name was Judge and not Gregorius.
Yeah, well, no, I wouldn't think that actually, mainly because, all right, to be fair, the main reason I wouldn't think that is because Didi Gregorius struck out 3 times, which is, the amount that Aaron Judge struck out in multiple games throughout the series.
Fewer times.
Yeah. Okay, so the Indians were the better team, clearly, and didn't even play down to their competition. They didn't show up. This is a team who, by and large, was one of the best offensive teams in the game, without a doubt. But a 171 average with 61 strikeouts. These two teams had 125 strikeouts between them. It is an astronomical number in a 5-game series, man. 125 strikeouts and 39 walks. But I'll tell you the one that screamed to me. The Indians, a team with, Francisco Lindor, Jason Kipnis, and I think we can agree on this, yes, very young, definitely one of the best middles in the game. And 9 errors on this ball club, an absolutely astronomical amount. And it led to just poor play, kicking the ball around, letting runs score. And it's, the Yankees lost, obviously, that 9-8 extra inning game in Game 2. They had 3 errors. But the big thing for me was Games 3, Game 4. A 5-hit game for both sides. Very basic. Andrew Miller not looking like what he was supposed to. But it's games like in Game 4 when it's 7-3, the Indians win, the Yankees win, and they committed 4 errors. There was just, I have never seen a ball club make errors the way that this club did in such a short amount of time in this big of a series. It just kind of blows your mind. Trevor Bauer did his best. Andrew Miller is the one really that I want to talk about because we knew that Aroldis Chapman had his own struggles during the year. There was talk of him possibly losing the closing job and Dellin Betances taking over. Betances pitched in 3 games. We didn't see a ton of him. Took the loss in one of the games and only gave up 1 earned run, but he walked 3, struck out 5, pitched 3 innings, which still is pretty good for him. I'm surprised we didn't see him at all in the game last night. But the big thing for me was the lack of performance by Andrew Miller, who was by far showed us one of the best reliever pitching performances that we have seen in the history of baseball last night or last season. I'm sorry. And then this year he comes in, obviously had the injuries, was out for a while. The team played fantastic without him. And I'm in no way saying that I would keep him off the field, that I wouldn't put him back in. It's going to look odd to say that when you have a 1.8 ERA, you took a loss, but you threw 5 innings, allowed 4 hits and 1 earned run. You strike out 8, you walk 2, that you didn't pitch well. But Andrew Miller really didn't pitch all that well. He didn't have the ability to go deep into games the way we saw last year. His command was not nearly what it was. The fastball didn't have the same velocity. The breaking stuff didn't move nearly as much as what we were used to. And the fact that you've got Trevor Bauer and Carlos Carrasco able to go 14 innings combined between the two of them, and then you can only get 6 innings out of Corey Kluber in 2 games. Now, granted, Trevor Bauer had a great game 1, had a very painful game 2, was taken out very, very early. But for me, man, it is. And I know that you had to step away for just a minute there. But as I was telling the audience listening in on the show is that, yes, what really surprised me at the end of it was the fact that the Indians committed 9 errors. And for those of you guys who aren't aware, and there will be a little bit of editing in the show, Chris is out of town right now. He's in Phoenix, so we're doing the show. Normally we have cameras on each other. We kind of know where we're at. But what I wanted to ask you when I realized that you had stepped away for just a quick second there was, to me, Kipnis and Lindor are one of the best middles in the game of baseball. I think you agree with me on that.
Sure. I mean, you're talking Kipnis, Lindor, Baez, and
Russell, Panic Crawford.
Russell, Panic Crawford. I mean, Altuve and
Correa, yeah.
Correa.
That one's coming up.
These are the great
9 errors by this ball club. And then,
right.
To me, what was not a good pitching performance by Andrew Miller, even though the numbers dictate he pitched okay, not a high ERA, but he couldn't eat up the kind of innings and didn't show the type of dominance that you and I saw from him last year that had us literally on the edge of our seats watching the
Right,
World
and
Series.
what I was thinking when I was hearing you say that initially was that no one's going to look at that stat line and go, oh, well, he had a terrible series. He threw 5 innings. He went 5 innings in 4 games, a little over an inning per game, and he only gave up, the one earned run, and he only had 1 hit, 1 earned run. He gave up the 1 long ball, but you're not going to look at that and go, oh, he had a bad series. But anybody who watched that series and has watched Andrew Miller pitch in the past is going to have looked at his performance and said, yeah, that's what you expect from him when he comes in the 9th. But you're using the guy in the 3rd and 4th inning, and not only is that not what he's for, that's not what what he's accustomed to, but you would think that if you're going to use somebody who's supposed to be that lights out in the 3rd and 4th inning, you're going to get 2 or 3 innings out of that guy. And his command was off, like you said. He was not hitting spots. It's one of those cases where the numbers don't tell the true story.
Right, and the other one that gets you is you see the numbers or lack thereof for Edwin Encarnacion. A batting average of a donut, 0s, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. But again, only played in 3 games, had the ankle injury. I'm not saying that was a tide turner, but you know that seeing him go down kind of sucks the life out of that team a little bit. Jay Bruce struggled, obviously, in the field. Had that 1 error that kicked away from Lindor. I think it was last night, actually, in the game. But he hit 278, was still a solid grab from the Mets, a piece I liked. And Yan Gomes, obviously, the hero of Game 2 in extra innings, hit 333. But everybody else, Austin Jackson, 214. Jason Kipnis, 182. Francisco Lindor hit 111, man. I mean, 2 hits and 18 at-bats. One of them was a dinger, great, and you drove in 4 on the grand slam, but you walked 4 times, you struck out 6, but hitting 111. Who expects to see sub 200 averages from Michael Brantley, Jason Kipnis, Francisco Lindor, and Jose Ramirez? It was just the perfect storm of poor production that led to their downfall. And you have to tip your cap to the Yankees who, stayed with it, stayed focused. I think bringing in a guy like Todd Frazier, a veteran guy who, really hasn't sniffed the playoffs much between being in Cincinnati and being in Chicago with the White Sox. But he came in there and made sure those guys stayed focused, which you had to, because when Aaron Judge hits 50, and I told you this morning, and the silence made me laugh, because you went, do you mean 0-5-0-50? Yeah, 0-5-0-50. And then Gary Sanchez, 174.
And sets a postseason record for the number of strikeouts in a single series.
26 strikeouts between Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez. 33%. Actually, just over 33% of the total number of team strikeouts for this ball club. 16 for Aaron Judge. And if you watch Mike and Mike, or you watch any of the shows that are out there, then you know that, all the stats of how Aaron Judge struck out more times in a 5-game series than Tony Gwynn did in the 1995 series, or Joe DiMaggio did back in his series. I mean, it's just, we are entering a new realm of baseball, type of baseball where the long ball is king and strikeouts don't matter, but those strikeouts are part of the reason why we're going to see the games take so long. But at the end of the day, man, and this is the one I know you want to talk about, that at bat by Brett Gardner.
Yes. So we talked about this today earlier, and I was blown away by the fact that Brett Gardner, who had laid down a bunt on the first pitch of the game to record the first out, and you went, why? Then comes up at the end of the game in a key situation and doesn't see not 7, 8, 9 pitches, which we would consider a phenomenal at bat. He sees 12 pitches, runs the count full, fouls 6 more off, and then hits the 12th pitch to score a run, and then, the Indians boot it again, and a second run scores to put it way out of reach. But that bat was not only the key to that game, but probably one of the better at-bats of the postseason, if not one of the better at-bats of the entire season.
Yeah, and I don't have the exact number in front of me, but the thing that, it was his second 12-pitch AB of the night. He saw roughly, and I don't have the exact number here, but he had roughly, I think he saw 35 pitches just in Game 5. So, I mean, if you think about this, 24 pitches in 2 at-bats, 12 each.
Right.
You see 1 pitch in your first at-bat. That
Right.
still leaves you with 10 more pitches to see. I mean, this guy, and he was one of the top 13 MLB hitters in pitches per plate appearances. And it's just, man, he's one of those guys who, I don't know how he does it, but he's that piece, at least in my mind, and he's a piece that the Yankees have oft looked trying to trade. But, man, I know you hate the word clutch, and it doesn't make a ton of sense, but, he's making, what, $25, $24 million in the next 2 seasons.
Right.
But, man, what gets me is that this guy always seems to be at bat when something big is going down. And he is a guy who Aaron Judge and St. from. He never tries to go outside of his means. You know what I mean? And I know as a baseball player, I think you kind of get where I'm going with that, but he never tries to do more than what his job is. He knows where he knows where his strengths lie, and he's got some pop. There is no doubt that he has some pop in that bat to put baseballs over the wall. I mean, he had 21 home runs, the most in his career this year at age 33, and yet still was seeing pitch after pitch after pitch. And he is a guy who is a veteran at controlling the count. And just that, to me, that at bat kind of summarized the entire series that was the ALDS with the Yankees and the Indians. I don't think we're going to see anything nearly like this against Houston because of the depth of the Astros, who we're going to get to here in just a second. But it is without a doubt a series for the ages. And it being a divisional series is just that much more crazy.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. If Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez hit the way they hit against the Indians, against the Astros, that's going to be a short series. There's no way, with the amount of pop and the amount of speed that is on that Astros team and the phenomenal pitching in that rotation, there's absolutely no way that the Yankees can sustain that kind of performance from two of their biggest names.
And the big thing now that came out that was announced today is that Masahiro Tanaka takes the ball in Game 1 in Houston against the Astros. The question, though, is are we getting the Masahiro Tanaka who pitched 7 shutout innings, walked 1, struck out 7, and only allowed 3 hits? Or are we getting the Masahiro Tanaka who got absolutely destroyed by the Tampa Bay Rays in the opening game and was pulled in the 3rd or 4th inning with 6 or 7 runs hung up on the board? That's the scary thing with him. But if he's on like he was in Game 3, Game 1 is going to be a very tight game. Very, very tight game.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what the Yankees do, because the Yankees have seen Verlander. Plenty. All those guys have at bats against Verlander. But it'll be interesting to see what the Yankees do, how well they get behind Masahiro Tanaka facing Justin Verlander. If he pitches the way he pitched in Game 3, this is going to be a tight pitcher's duel that's going to come down to a single mistake, in my opinion.
And it'll be, like you said, it'll be a bullpen issue. And that's one thing, if you're Joe Girardi, you have to be smiling about. And obviously, we know that he took a lot of flack for pulling, I believe it was pulling Sabathia early, for not challenging the call on the field in Game 2. But, I mean, my goodness, if you have Dellin Betances fresh as can be, and Aroldis Chapman is still pitching well, and you can get yourself, deep into a tight ball game against the Astros, they have the ability, they have the power. The question is, do they have the discipline? That's what we're going to see, I think, put on display here by the Astros, is going to be their ability to force, or I don't know, I guess force isn't the right word, but the Astros' ability to use the Yankees' young hitters' lack of discipline against them, get them into quick pitchers' counts, and then put them away. That is where I think the Yankees will falter. Plus, I think at the end of the day, they have a much shorter depth in their rotation. But again, we'll see on that. I think where we both lean on that series is pretty much known by everyone listening. But again, let's take a look at the Red Sox-Astros series. Give you then our LCS predictions. You're listening to Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on the Grueling Truth Network. Of course, Out of Left Field with Chris and Graham on Facebook as well, and at OO Left Field on Twitter. So the only team this year so far in the postseason to be hitting over 300 is the Houston Astros. Probably could have asked you who was the only team over 300 I think everyone would have gotten that one right. They're hitting .333, a .402 on base, 49 team hits, 8 dingers, only 2 errors in their series. The Red Sox, though, still pitched and played very well. .285 average with a .340 on base. They struck out 33 times, so 63 combined strikeouts between these two teams, homered 5 and drove in 18. So it was a very interesting series. We see 8-2 in the first 2 games. Seems pretty easy to say, bye Felicia, to throw out one of your favorite movies in Friday. But man, the Red Sox gave it a shot. 10-3. They were just piling on runs, and then turn around in Game 4, and you talk about a Game 4 for the a game for the ages again. This is why having 5-game series change everything, because you can have aces in relief. Because when you look at the line, you see, Verlander went 2-0. Sale went 0-2. They must have started. Wait a second. It's only they both came in relief. So we get to see 2 games out of a 4-game set with 2 of the best pitchers in baseball facing off against each other. One where they're fully rested and ready to go. One coming in relief, which is just that much better because it's unexpected. And that series, I think, at least for me, gave me way more than what I was expecting. I think the Red Sox, like I said, they need a power bat. That's why J.D. Martinez will be a coveted free agent. I think will be the biggest free agent of the 2017-2018 free agency period, which we'll be discussing plenty in the coming weeks. But, man, Verlander, Keuchel, they're good. They're what we thought they were. We know why Verley was brought into Houston, and they took care of business fairly handily. And I think that the first 2 games are much more indicative of what the series was than Game 4.
Well, and the other thing that this series gave us that we didn't get from the other series that we've seen so far in the other divisional series is it gave us the people we wanted to see do well, especially in Jose Altuve, who hit .533. He was 8 for 15 in this series, slugging 1.13 with an OPS of 1.765. And I don't think going in that anybody expected any less out of him. I mean,
probably should have thrown him into the MVP NLDS conversation as well. My bad there, little guy. I feel bad because Altuve is just this kid is the smallest person I've ever called a freak of nature.
Yeah. He again, if they're gonna institute a divisional series MVP, Altuve just made a damn good case for exactly why they should do that. And I mean, he was almost impossible to get out, especially when you consider that they were able to hold guys like Dustin Pedroia to a 125 batting average, who I don't think any of us thought that Dustin Pedroia was going to get held that low. I'm sure we didn't expect him to come out and put up MVP numbers, but he is a former MVP, and we expect him to do better on a big stage like this. And between guys like Carlos Correa, who maybe didn't do as well as Jose Altuve, Correa only went .235 for the series, but guys like Carlos Correa, guys like Jose Altuve, the very timely hitting of Carlos Beltran, and then
you can't leave out Yuli Gurriel, the first baseman, hitting .529.
Yeah, hitting .529. And the lights-out shutdown pitching of the guys who you expect to be lights-out shutdown pitchers.
Yes, exactly. And, I think we both know that we're not going to see a 125 batting average from Brian McCann the entire way through the 2017 postseason. Okay, you get 2 hits in 16 at bats, strike out 4 times. Okay, we know that he's not going to be hitting Altuve numbers, but he's going to have much better numbers once we can put together a better sample size. When it came down to it, and you could see these guys just seemed frustrated. Xander Bogaerts, 059. Eduardo Nunez, the guy we thought the guy from the Giants, supposed to be the big piece. He goes down, gets 1 at bat in, got nothing out of it. Like you mentioned, Pedroia hits 125. Benintendi, 250. Jackie Bradley hit right at the Mendoza line, 200. These guys, they've got so much talent, but you're right, they just don't have yet that one piece that kind of protects them going through the middle of the order. You can get around Benintendi, Betts. It all depends on where these guys are coming from. There's nobody that really presents that threat, that worry, of power, and that is what they need. It's why I keep saying.
And talking about
Poppy's. Yeah, I mean, that was the worst thing is watching A-Rod kind of wave his Yankees World Series ring in front of Ortiz last night after we watched the Yankees move on. Obviously, the Red Sox already having been eliminated, but we're going to see good pitching from the Astros. It's going to happen. Yes, you're going to have, Liriano had, in 2 games only got through 2/3 of an inning, but it's 1 earned run. So when I say a 4.63 ERA, that doesn't really paint the whole picture for these ball clubs because again, a lot of these guys are they're obviously in very small sample sizes. The one that has me, I guess, the most concerned still is that we still don't know what we're getting from Lance McCullers. Was on the injury report throughout the year, started off great. He and Keuchel, along with Chris Sale, were easily going 1, 2, 3, in whatever order you wanted to put them in for the Cy Young. Then Kluber came back and just did what Kluber did. Unfortunately, he didn't do those things in the postseason. But, Keuchel, a 1.59 ERA in 5 2/3. Verlander, a 3.12 ERA in 8 2/3. Obviously, 2 games there, one of those being in relief. It was a very nice, it was a very well pitched game by both teams. You didn't get a chance to see Craig Kimbrell much. The guys you did have a chance to see came in really in that 10-3 drubbing in game 3 there, because you had no reason to have them in when you were so far down in games 1 and games 2. The hardest one to swallow if you are a Red Sox fan, and there's a bunch of you out there, we know that, is that Addison Reed was supposed to be one of the best relievers that was on the trade, the trading block for this 2017 season. And in 3 games, he gave you a 7.71 ERA, 2 earned runs, walked 1, gave up 3 hits and 2 1/3. Just couldn't give you enough depth into games to make it worthwhile. David Price came in. David Price pitched extremely well out of the bullpen. We didn't get a chance to see him, obviously, starting because of the arm injury. But going 6 2/3, 5 hits and no runs, struck out 6, Price looked really good. And yes, I understand that you expect to win because of the way that the last 2 years have gone. The Red Sox fired John Farrell, which we are definitely going to talk about here in just a couple of minutes. But if David Price pitches like this out of the bullpen, we know he's got the insane contract. But if Bryce pitched that well out of the bullpen coming off of an injury, and then you're going to have Chris Sale, who we expect to keep doing what Chris Sale does. Drew Pomeranz pitched very well during the year. Hopefully is something that we're going to get to see him continue next season as well. And you have to hope that Rick Porcello can be more than just a flash in the pan. 11-17 this season after a 22-4 year last year. But if you get these guys back to what we saw last year, then there's a good possibility here when you have 1 through 4 of Chris Sale, David Price, Drew Pomeranz, Rick Porcello, you're going to have yourself set up for a pretty good length of time. You have plenty of youth in your lineup. Benintendi is going to be a star in this game. Betts, Bogarts, Bradley already there. They're making names for themselves. Eduardo Nunez is a guy I think they will look to re-sign as well. Dustin Pedroia, he's the laser show. He's obviously up there in age. We saw him get fiery at Mark Wegner rather in Game 4. And take a second to sit back there and think about that. You rarely ever see an ejection in a postseason game. Kudos to Wegner for trying to get Pedroia out of the way, letting Farrell come in there on, complaining about the strike 3 call, which was the correct call, especially if you watch the K zone. It was a strike, but he allows Farrell to come in to pick up the argument, protect his player, and ejects Farrell. Anyone wants to say, well, why wasn't he ejected? A longer leash is afforded these players in the postseason. They want the players to decide the games, the outcomes, what happens. And that is what Wegner did, a big tip of the cap to him for that, because it is, he had the ability to make things very difficult very early on for the Red Sox and did not do that. The Astros are a great team. There's no doubt about it. I know I'm talking a lot, guys. Chris just stepped away from the mic for just a minute. He will be right back here, so I'm not going to be just talking your ear off, but I always want to thank you for sticking with us. We are part of the Grueling Truth Network. Please take some time, check out thegruelingtruth.net. It's a great site full of great articles, a lot of good fantasy stuff, all your pick'ems, what's going to happen throughout the week. Raiders podcast, a Black Hole Banter, Rouge, White, and Blue for the CFL, NHL Power Rankings. Everything is in there. It's a great site to check out. Also, give us a follow at Grueling Truth on Twitter and the Grueling Truth on Facebook. I'd love to interact with you guys. It's a great place to follow. You'll get some good stuff there. Some will make you raise your eyebrows, but that's the beauty of what the game is. Chris is exactly right, though. Oh, and I think we got him back. There we go. Chris is back with us now, but man, I was just telling everyone that I think the big thing here is that, yes, you were overpowered by just a better, a 100-win team, a better team. But when you have these these young'uns like Benintendi, Betts, Bogarts, Bradley, and then the possibility, Nunez as well, and the possibility of David Bryce pitching as well as he did in relief, if he stays on the road to recovery, if you will, the thought of having Chris Sale, David Bryce, Drew Pomeranz, and Rick Porcello all pitching well should be something that concerns the American League next year and should make a lot of Red Sox fans feel comfortable for several more seasons to come.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If I'm a Red Sox fan right now, I'm really not losing my mind. I actually read something the other day, though. That's because
you're not a Red Sox fan. A real Red Sox fan is most deniably losing their mind.
But I'm not worried about my future at this point, except for for the loss of John Farrell. That worries me. If I'm a Red Sox fan, I'm worried about the fact that the upper management and the front management and the ownership and the general manager looked at this series and looked at how poorly the players played, looked at how poorly guys like Mookie Betts. Yeah, Mookie Betts had a high batting average, but let's not forget that going into Game 3, Mookie Betts had no hits. He got all those hits in the second two games, in Games 3 and 4. So you look at how badly these players played and how the pitching wasn't really able to come through in the way that you want the pitching to come through. And you look at all of that and you say, well, John Farrell's the problem. Let's fire him. If I'm a Boston Red Sox fan, I'm not worried about my future. I've got a lot of young, talented players on my team, but I just lost a very talented manager for something that I don't think the manager had a whole lot of control over. It's not like he made management mistakes in how he managed those games. It's the players didn't come through. They didn't play Sox baseball in the way you expect to see that team do it.
And I understand that, but at the same time, we look at the fact that, he takes over for Tito Francona in I believe it was in 2012, and they win the World Series in 13, and then they go into last place the year after. There was never really any consistency with this Red Sox ball club, aside from winning 2 division titles the last 2 seasons and then getting bounced in the first round. They brought in Dave Dombrowski as the new GM from the Tigers, and I think Dombrowski wants his own manager and feels that a change is needed to try and get these guys to think beyond the first round.
Over the last 4 years, right, over the last 4 years of this Boston Red Sox team since the World Series win, so 5 years, 13 through 17, you're talking about half that team aged out and was replaced by younger, faster guys. So, yeah, they went to last place, but how many guys did they lose after that World Series team that was a last hurrah for them? And then to lose this year, to lose the equivalent of an El Capitan for the Boston Red Sox in Poppy, I'm surprised they got as far as they did, to be quite honest. I mean, they didn't have the emotional support inside that clubhouse that they had last year going into the postseason.
Agreed. And that was the biggest thing that we talked about earlier this year, when we were doing, our 30-team preview, was who was going to become the emotional heartbeat of that team. And we still don't know it yet. I think right now it's still Pedroia. We saw the way he got fired up, obviously, in Game 4. Right now he's the emotional leader of that team. As they go, he goes, and he does not expect anything but winning and good baseball, and that's a good thing. But it's not long before he won't obviously still be with that team. But I'm never a fan of them not bringing him back. I think Farrell was a good manager. I've heard talk that maybe Brad Ausmus might get looked at, which would surprise me. I'm not sure that he would be the one I would put in there, especially with some of the pieces that they had in Detroit. Granted, they went into full rebuild mode, but it always seemed like Detroit kind of underachieved.
If I'm Boston,
bigger picture.
If I'm Boston, I'm looking specifically for one of two things. Either a young manager who I can control as a general manager, who is also going to be fired up and excited about his first opportunity, or maybe even a second opportunity as a manager, or I'm looking to try to woo a winning manager who might be coming to the end of his contract, like a Dusty Baker, who might be coming to the end of his contract, who I know has the ability to put teams in the postseason. Although beyond the 2002 Giants, I don't know that I can really give too much of a nod to Dusty Baker's postseason experience. But he is one of the winningest managers in baseball, and if you can woo him to a Boston Red Sox, even if it's just for 2 or 3 seasons, to try to get that team over the hump. That's who I'm looking for a young guy that is going to be fired up for an opportunity.
Yeah, and speaking of managerial moves, also came out that, and we discussed this last week quickly, that Paul Molitor did have an offer extended to him by the Twins. We weren't sure what that was going to be. It has about that he has signed a 3-year extension with the Twinkies. So obviously, as we said, a lot of these guys, we're going to end up kind of managing themselves either into or out of, or out of a job. And I don't think, I think the difficulty here is there's going to be an expectation the Twins try to make a run like this again. And we'll see what happens. I mean, the Indians are obviously going to be the favorites to win that division again. I think they'll make a push to sign Jay Bruce.
To be fair, along the lines of what I was just saying, I don't know if I said this to you or if I just to you or if I said it on the show last week, but if the 1-year contract extension, which I think, in my opinion, for what Paul Molitor was able to do, is kind of a slap in the face. But if the 1-year contract extension would have been all that was forthcoming from the Twins, then I think, as the general manager of the Boston Red Sox, I'm going to make an offer to Paul Molitor in an attempt to say, hey, we saw what you did with a team that wasn't supposed to do anything. Come to Boston, and let's see what you can do with a team that's supposed to do something.
Well, I mean, Molitor already signed the extension, so you can't go out there and ask him. But let's keep in mind.
No. I'm saying a week ago.
Okay, I get you.
Once the initial 1-year sort of slap in the face offer was extended a week ago, if I'm the Boston Red Sox, and I think the Twins knew this, but if I'm the Boston Red Sox and I know Farrell's on his way out, I'm making an offer to Paul Molitor to see what he can do with a team full of young, talented ball players.
Right, and let's not forget that Joe Girardi and Dusty Baker, both contracts are up once their team is eliminated from postseason contention.
And let's not forget that Joe Girardi is probably getting a little bit tired of the way he's being treated in New York, as is the wont for New York managers, though. I mean, New York managers catch a lot more flack than almost any other managerial staff in baseball because of the ire that comes with Yankees fans. Like I said to you, he could win the World Series this year. If he lost the game on opening day next year, they would be calling for his job. That's just how Yankees fans are.
Yes, and I think the one that's going to, that we're going to see, and this is going to really end up being, I think that the fact that the Cubbies would go in to the National Stadium in Game 5 and really just end up kind of embarrassing this Nationals team after the way the Strasburg, whole thing was handled. I will be interested to see what happens with Dusty Baker going into the off season with the Nationals. That being said, it is that time, Chris Furry. The LCS games were set. We start playoff baseball again tomorrow now for the League Championship Series. The beauty is we're still going to be able to have baseball one game every day for the next week or so. So let's go ahead and look first at our picks. The Chicago Cubs will get the enjoyment of making their way to the West Coast and facing the Los Angeles Dodgers. Start out a huge 7-game set. I'm fairly certain we can assume that Clayton Kershaw will be going for that. And as John Lester pitched, I believe he pitched yesterday after the rainout, we'll most likely see Jose Quintana getting the start in Game 1 for the Cubs. Who do you have, and in how many games?
Well, if you had asked me a week ago, and if you would have told me a week ago that the Cubs were going to move on, first of all, I would have told you were wrong. But in light of what I've seen.
But hang on, but to be fair, I mean, I could have told you anything, and you always tell me I'm wrong.
Well, no, I don't think. If you would have told me a week ago that the Dodgers were going to beat the Diamondbacks, not sweep the Diamondbacks, but beat the Diamondbacks and move on to the LCS, I would have looked at you and went, duh. But if you would have told me that the Cubs, a team who really didn't look like they were even going to win their division going into the last quarter of the season, that the Cubs were going to beat the Nationals, who had their division sewn up, I don't know, 2 weeks into the season, 3 weeks into the season. Now, granted, it's one of the worst divisions in baseball, but still, they sewed that division up strong and early. I didn't think with the caliber of pitching that the Nationals had and the caliber of pitching, the caliber of players that they had, that they were going to drop this series. So, in my opinion, the Cubbies don't move on from the LCS. I don't think we see another Cubbies World Series. The Dodgers, in my opinion, are the team. And realistically, I think the Yankees took out the one team that the Dodgers were legitimately concerned about facing in the World Series. I think the Stros are probably a close second, but the number one team I think the Dodgers were worried about looking at were the Indians, and now they're gone. So I say Dodgers in 5.
5. I'm surprised that that's where you went with it. I think the beauty is here is you've got, if you can keep it close, and the question is going to be again, Cubs pitching has been very down this year. The Lester Arrieta has not looked like himself at all. Lackey, I'm interested to see if he stays a bullpen guy, a guy who we have not seen yet in this postseason. Which, I mean, that in itself to me is kind of mind blowing. I mean, you have a guy here. Yes, I understand. You know, you haven't needed it, but John Lackey was your 4th or 5th starter. One of your better pitchers during the season, and you haven't thrown him at all. I mean, it's a 7-game set. You at least need to have. Normally, you at least need 4 or 5 starters, and maybe they're going to try a 4 pitcher rotation with Lester, Hendricks, Quintana, and Arrieta. The beauty of it is if you can keep it close, at least in some capacity, keep it close, then you're going to see 2 of the best closers that we had this year in Wade Davis and obviously Kenley Jansen, who was absolutely lights out for that Dodgers team.
Look, I am genetically predisposed to disliking the Dodgers. You know that. I know that. It's just how it is. But I have to say that watching Kenley Jansen this season has been an absolute pleasure, because there's nothing better than watching someone who is good at baseball play baseball well, and there's absolutely no doubt that that's what Kenley Jansen has done all year long.
Very true. So here's what I'll say. Dodgers win the series, I agree. But I think that we see Kershaw has to prove to me still that he is Clayton Kershaw in the regular season, the same as he can be in the postseason. I get that we've seen some really good outings from him, but hey, he has a long track record to try and get rid of that stigma. I will say that the Cubbies can get 1 game from Clayton Kershaw that he will struggle. I will go Dodgers in 6. Moving on to the American League, I think we're pretty much right up on this one. It's going to be the Boston Red Sox going into Houston to face the Astros. What a great I'm sorry, not the Red Sox. The Yankees going into Houston. They were done that.
We already played that series, Graham.
Yeah, we've been there, done that. Got the T-shirt. Well, somebody else got the T-shirt, but that's never mind.
Third World Country got a T-shirt that said that Boston won.
There you go. But I think we're both in agreement on this. I'm going to go, and I get that the Red Sox had that big 10-3 game. The bats came alive. and one of that was off that fluky play off Reddick's glove around pesky pole. I have the Astros winning the series handily 4-1.
Well, we're definitely of a mind on this particular issue. I also have the Astros winning this series in 5. I think you have to allow for the fact that the Yankees are going to be scrapping in this series because they know, A, they're playing the best remaining team in the American League and the second best team in the American League by a single game during the regular season. They know who they're up against. They know that they're going to see Justin Verlander. They know that they're going to see Dallas Keuchel 1 and 2, and they know that they don't have pitching to match up with either one of those guys unless Tanaka can go ahead and be lights out like he was in Game 3. I say Yankees pick up 1 out of sheer scrappiness, but they do drop the series in 5.
Well, you understand that the fact that we are kind of one mind is why our significant others won't let us move near each other, right?
Yeah, I'm starting to figure out that this is really just a conspiracy between the two of them to keep us apart.
I feel the same, and they just don't understand what it means, man. They just don't get it. They just
they hate us. That's
that's
the only possible. Well, it is.
So there you have it, guys. That is the picks. We both obviously have the same World Series predictions in the Dodgers and the Astros. Chris has it a 4 games. Go ahead.
You know, it's funny. I just want to say this. You know, it's funny that that several times this season we've said Dodgers Astros, Dodgers Astros, Dodgers Astros, and as much as everything has really just fallen down around our ears as far as predictions, that is the one that is really, really stuck is Dodgers Astros.
I mean, I got no problem hanging my hat on that. I don't. I mean, hell, if we look at this at the end of the day, we picked. I think for the most part, we picked our games right at about 500, and if that's the case, that's a Hall of Fame. That's a Hall of Fame clip right there. So I'm okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you have it. Chris has the Dodgers over the Cubs in 5. I have the Dodgers over the Cubs in 6, and we both have the Astros over the Yankees, got it right that time, in 5 games. What a crazy divisional series it was. Emotions running high between the Windy City and the nation's capital. Obviously the Big Apple breaks the hearts of everybody in Believeland, and that is just as crazy as it is to say, just the beginning of what will be the Major League Baseball postseason. The National League, the American League Championship Series, the World Series still yet to come, and Chris and I will be here to bring you every game, our breakdowns throughout the postseason. Guys, enjoy the next 2.5 weeks of baseball. It is going to be one hell of a ride for everybody here at the Grueling Truth Network. And for Chris Furry, I'm Graham McGowan. Have yourself a great rest of the week. Enjoy some LCS baseball, and we'll see you back here next week on Out of Left Field.